David,
Ken,
the one and only therapist. We're back at it.
the top G of therapists.
The top G.
Although I'm not really a therapist. I said this last time because I recently got in trouble. People are like, you're not really a therapist. I'm a core energetics practitioner, which is a somatic. It's a somatic psychotherapy, but there's all kinds of legal implications. But I did a 5-year training program, so I feel quite qualified. But technically, I'm not allowed to call myself or as a therapist, even though it's essentially what I do.
What do you think about normal therapists?
I think that there's some really, really good ones. For instance, the woman, I forget her name, who is on that show, Couples Therapy. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's worth watching. It's great. She's incredible. There's a lot of great people out there. But I think a lot of the training it's just academic, meaning they understand the concepts, the ideas, but unless you do the deep emotional work for yourself, you don't really understand it on an embodied level. And so for me, I think the program that I went through was 5 years of intense emotional process work. So I was getting into all of my feelings, going back into the past and feeling all the things that the child couldn't feel so that I could understand what happened to me, really understand it, not just as a concept, but as an experience in my body, and then integrate that. And so that's my approach to the work. And I think that gives me a kind of advantage because I'm able to attune to people and understand because I've gone through it. And it's not, as I said, it's not just an intellectualization of the process. So I'm a big believer in the somatic approach. And it suits me because I was somebody who was an athlete, worked out, connected to my body. So the idea of doing therapy that was physical, that involved like hitting, punching, kicking, breath work, things like that, where I could actually feel my feelings and let them, flow through me. That was very scary to feel our feelings, but it feels like that's how we heal. In my opinion, we just talking about things is not enough. You actually have to go back and feel the feelings the child couldn't feel. It wasn't safe to feel, and liberate yourself from them.
When you met Andrew Tate, you didn't do any physical therapy, right?
No.
But it was still so powerful because you just got him in like you got him so vulnerable.
Right.
And you showed such a different side of him that it was like one of the most intense Andrew Tate interviews, or one of the ones you have to kind of watch, right?
Yeah. Well, I'd spoken to Andrew once before, 3 or 4 years ago during COVID, when I just started my podcast, before he really blew up. So he's a little bit more available, and he put out a call on Twitter, a tweet on Twitter saying that he was open to doing podcasts and interviews. And so I reached out to him, and I said, hey, I'm a psychotherapist, and how about we do an interview where I psychoanalyze you? And he was like, that sounds like fun. Let's do it. And so that was just more of a conversation that we had. I mean, I pried a little bit, but what happened was we connected. And there was a kind of some safety that was created. And he could feel that I wasn't out to get him and that I understood him in some way. And I think he appreciated that. And maybe that I saw him in a way that he wasn't normally used to being seen and understood. And which I think all people want. We want to be seen. We want to be known. We want to be understood. So, I had that experience with him. And so when it came to the most recent interview, there was already a relationship. There was already something established. And I knew I could push. I knew I could pry. I knew I could dig in a little bit because that was the whole context of the interview. He's doesn't believe in therapy. I'm a therapist, but obviously there's a contradiction there, because then why would you invite me to come do this? Like, and I could feel in him this place where he was aware that there must be things about himself that he didn't understand. And so I found him, despite appearances, very open, very vulnerable, very willing, very kind. Like you just feel his heart. Like he's like there's a part of him. I mean, he's a man, he's a king, but there's another part of him who's just a little boy, like a precocious little boy, and that wants to play and wants to have fun and wants to explore. And that's how I approached the interview. And I mean, there's a lot to talk about there, obviously, but I was impressed and satisfied with his willingness to go along with my line of questioning, to consider the things that I was asking him, and then in the really profound moments, I would say that were profound, particularly at the end, that he allowed himself to be guided by me. He surrendered in a way to my authority, and allowed himself to have an experience that was new for him. And to do that on camera when you're Andrew Tate, I thought that was amazing. And a lot of people, obviously, like you, were really impacted by that. So, I thought it was a great interview. But also, just like if that was just a private therapy session, I would have considered that a great first session with a client.
Yeah. Even without the physical part.
Yes, that was the original question, without the physical part. We had the constraints of the camera, and maybe at some point, I'll go back and we'll do that. But the physical part is much more challenging, as you know, because it brings you right into your feelings. It's hard to, talking about things is one thing, but actually hitting and feeling, it takes you out of control. And you get out of the story. You get out of the control center of your mind and into your feelings. And that's the most vulnerable thing to do. And not everybody's open for that. Not everybody's ready for that, especially on camera, because you're showing aspects of yourself that you wouldn't normally show the world, but also you don't even show yourself sometimes. Like, it's a process of discovery, and nobody really knows what's going to come out and how it's going to come out. I, as the facilitator, I have some idea, some notion, but I don't actually know what the person is going to say next, which is why it's so exciting, because how often are you really in the unknown emotionally and just letting things come out? But it's also very exciting, and I think for the audience watching, it's compelling to watch somebody, especially like you, surrender, take a risk, do something you've never done before, reveal parts of yourself, the places where you got hurt or you're angry, all the things that we all have that we tend not to share or talk about, or maybe we talk about it in private. To show that out for the world to see is incredible. And maybe one day that'll happen with Andrew. Probably not. It's probably not. But just what we did was I think pretty incredible.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like even when he does all the kickboxing, he works a lot of his feelings out on those punching bags. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, he does that on a daily basis.
I think that's right. And I think, this has been going around, everybody been talking about on Twitter, is therapy, is it effective? Is it useful? And particularly men. A lot of men don't want to go to therapy. And I understand why. The American Psychological Association declared traditional masculinity harmful. And most therapists, not all, are women who graduated from mostly woke institutions that want to smash the patriarchy. So it's not, a man doesn't want to go and be subjected to that. He doesn't feel like he's going to be seen, understood, appreciated. Like masculinity has been demonized in a lot of ways. So why would a man want to go to therapy? And that said, there are, I think, really good therapists out there who are women, and there's good male therapists. But in the absence of that, I think most men rightly can work out their emotions through intense physical exercise, whether it's lifting weights or jujitsu or running, whatever it is. I mean, I think that's a very, very effective way to work through your emotions without actually talking about them. I obviously have a bias. I think there's a lot of value in going and talking about what's going on inside your mind, just because I think self-knowledge is powerful for anyone to have. The more you know and understand yourself, I think the more powerful and effective you're going to be in the world. And obviously, the things that you don't know and understand about yourself can get you into trouble. You can have distortions and blind spots, and based on those distortions and blind spots, you can take actions that are not rooted in truth. And so I think a lot of men find themselves in that situation. They don't know why they're in some repeating pattern. They don't know why they can't stop their addictions. They don't know why they keep getting into the same fight with their girlfriend. And yes, you can go work out your emotions, through jiu-jitsu and working out, but maybe there's something about yourself that you don't understand. Maybe there's a part of you that is in pain or has fear that you're not really connected to. And I think particularly for men, we don't like to admit that we're afraid. We don't like to admit that we're in pain. But what I try to explain to people is, like, you were a little boy once, an innocent little boy, helpless and vulnerable. And almost all of us, in different ways, got hurt or were afraid. And if there wasn't the space to express those emotions, or if those feelings weren't held or understood by our caregivers, they're still inside us. And they can get activated as adults. And it's hard to make sense of that unless you've actually experienced it and made the connection, like really seen that the little boy in you sometimes takes over and starts running things. I mean, most people experience it in their relationships, where they're having these fights and their defenses come up and they're blaming the other person. And it's really hard, I think, to get vulnerable. And I think we have a lot, men in particular have a lot of, but women too, have a lot of resistance to getting vulnerable because it feels like weak, or they have a judgment about it. But what happens is the more you do some kind of work, you start to realize that all of your power is in fact in your vulnerability. Because what is vulnerability? Ultimately, it's truth. And truth and presence are the most powerful aspects that you can have, I think, as a man. If you're willing to stand in your truth, if you're willing to be vulnerable, I think it's extraordinarily powerful. It's much more powerful than the kind of bravado or the machismo that is fine. I don't have a judgment, because sometimes it's very authentic, but often that can be a mask or a defense against the pain or the vulnerability, or even I would say the love. We think of women usually as the ones being very sensitive and loving and gentle and nurturing. I don't think that's true. I think men have big hearts and are very capable of caring and nurturing and love. I mean, most men in the world are working their asses off in jobs they don't like. Why? Because they love their family. Because they want to take care of and support their family. And that's sacrifice is deep and profound to me. So I think men the culture often shows them as, this, like the Andrew Tates of the world, right? These tough guys, or the MMA fighters. But even when you look past Tate, like if you really look at Tate or you look at these MMA fighters, they're all like super, not all, but many are really sweet, sensitive, loving, caring men.
Most of the times.
Most of the
Yeah.
times, yeah. Yeah.
Every time I thought somebody was very intimidating and mean looking, they were the most sweetheart. Always the biggest guys in the gym turns out to be the biggest sweethearts that need the most love.
Exactly.
And hide behind that muscly body or whatever.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
That's crazy. So what do you think about this Andrew Tate perspective where you're like, you have this mindset that doesn't allow weakness, and therapy is a little bit of a weakness, I would say. And also he has this perspective that like he loves his dad. He loves everything bad that happened to him because it made him stronger. And he like purposefully changed his mind to be like, I'm a man and I don't crave happiness. I'm getting shit done. This is my purpose. I'm useful. I'm a protector, provider, and I get shit done. I don't need to be happy anymore. This is like for me, the most useful Tate advice is the stop being happy, or stop like trying to like be happy all the time.
Yeah.
Sadness is a part of life. Life is going to be unfair. You're a man and you need to do this. And since I've listened to him, I've been like, instead of putting myself in this victim mentality, now I'm like, like Andrew Tate told me, like, you just got to get shit done.
Yeah.
It's always going to be unfair. And your wife will never be able to endure the shit that you have to endure, because you will be the man of the household and you have to hold it up and keep it together. And nobody cares about your feelings. And that really made me like, people always say like, be in touch with your feminine side and it's good to cry and blah, blah, blah. But when there's an intruder or shit goes down, there's no place for me to have emotional breakdowns and cry about it. I need to act and I need to help and I need to protect. And like he always says, like your boss and your wife, nobody cares about how you feel as a man. And even the gym. If we would only go to the gym if we feel like it, you'll never get a six-pack. It's about getting shit done when you don't feel like it, like the ultimate discipline. So then, how does therapy come into that? Because for me, it seems like almost like admitting to weakness.
It's a great question. And listen, all the things you just said, I think are virtues. Like what Tate says about getting shit done and being disciplined and not being ruled or controlled by your emotions and being capable and taking care of your family and taking responsibility. All of that is true. And I think it is true that the culture in general doesn't really care about men's feelings. I mean, in an evolutionary sense, women are more important than men because you can have one man impregnate 10 women, right? But that's a 9-month process for them. So we send men to war to die. So their lives on some level are worth less than women's. And men know that. It's women and children first, and we don't debate that. We know that that's true. We want that. Like, we're going to take the bullet. And I think all of that is really important. And we shouldn't get lost or indulge in our feelings of sadness or resentment or our pain or complaining that the world is not fair. It's not fair. It's never going to be fair. What I would say is that therapy is not out to make you a victim. It's actually, at least the way I practice it, is trying to encourage full self-responsibility. And so all of those things that we just talked about, like getting shit done, being successful, being capable, that's all great. However, what's motivating it, right? Are we being motivated by the deepest part of ourselves, like by our higher self? Are we really doing it out of a place of service, right? To ourselves, to our family, or to God? Or are we doing it because we're trying to prove something to someone? Maybe trying to win the love of our father, maybe trying to win the love of our mother, right? And I think when we have mixed motivations or unconscious motivations that we're not aware of, I think sometimes the actions we take can be distorted and that egoistic. And we see that. I mean, we see a lot of men who are successful or trying to be successful, but it's coming from a place of ego. And what happens is once they achieve the success, they don't do good things with it. They just keep, wanting to get more. And I think it's hard to deny that there's been a lot of men that have done a lot of harm, right? Whether it's their treatment towards women or whether it's the destruction of the planet. And so there's been a distortion. And I think that's the pushback that we've seen in the culture. I don't think that I don't buy into the notion of the patriarchy needs to be smashed or, men are the problem with society. I don't think that's true. I think it's always a yin and a yang. I think the masculine and feminine are always working together in conjunction with each other. But I think there's a place where men have not taken responsibility for themselves and they have done a lot of harm in the world. And I think the reason for that is because they are in pain. And so I would say that the recognition, understanding of the places that the little boy got hurt or was afraid actually make you a more powerful man. The more you know about yourself, the better. The more you know about like your emotional body, right? And you have awareness around that. Just what I said, like in the last question, like I think vulnerability is the ultimate strength. And how do we know that? Because if you go to the movies and you see the big strong man actually being vulnerable, and that doesn't mean breaking down and crying like a bitch. It's in complaining that shit's not fair. That's not vulnerability, right? That's ego. But being able to admit that they were hurt or they were afraid. Like when you hear Mike Tyson say, I was afraid every time I stepped into the ring. It's scary. The guy standing across from me is scary. Like I was afraid. We feel a relief in that because it's like Mike Tyson was afraid because I'm afraid all the time. Tyson was afraid. And even hearing Tate say, that he was scared. He was scared in jail and that he was also scared as a little boy with his father. And you saw the look in his eyes. Like it was scary, and when he was in jail, like things were out of control and that he has nightmares and he doesn't know what they're about. Like, I think that's the reason that the interview was so impactful for people because they actually saw that Tate's human, that he has fear, that he has pain. And yeah, we like the part of him that gives these incredibly inspirational speeches, which are amazing. And he's right about most of the things he says, And he's also, as we talked about, he's a little bit of a comedian and he pushes the limits and he knows that he has to entertain to get an audience. So it's like take everything he says with a grain of salt. But the essence of all that stuff, man up, take care of your business, work out, work hard, get shit done. Yeah, of course. I agree with all that. And it was nice to see him be vulnerable. I mean, it was a relief and it makes him more of a man. It makes him feel more human. And so that's how I think about therapy for men, at least. And so I think, with the right therapist, with the right approach, I think therapy can be really useful for men, for those who are drawn to it and those who want to go down that path of self-realization. It's not for everybody. And if somebody doesn't feel like they want to do that, that's fine. I don't think you have to go to therapy, but I think if you want to know more about yourself, whether it's through therapy or other kind of spiritual practices, you want to, go do psychedelics or you want to go on a vision quest or go on a 10-day Vipassana retreat. I think all of these practices that force you to go inside yourself and know yourself and understand yourself, I think they're incredibly valuable.
maybe that's the problem I have with traditional therapy, and not to throw everything in a bucket, but a lot of times it seems like this like constant venting, victimization, no self accountability, and that's like where it's so different. What you do
Mm-hmm.
is like you said, like if you really are vulnerable, it's powerful.
Yeah.
But if you just vent and victimize yourself, it's it's like the opposite for me, and that's like what draws me away from like traditional therapy. I
Yeah.
think is the digging for problems and making them bigger, how they even are, and like having somebody like tell you how big your problems are, and like you know.
Yeah. Well, that is the blind spot, of course. That unconsciously, I don't think therapists are consciously doing this, but there is a motivation, a leverage to exacerbate your problems so that you'll keep coming back.
Yeah.
So you're financially incentivized to make the client feel like they have a lot of problems and they need your help, and that's I mean that's a problem with any kind of service industry like that. My approach is there's nothing wrong with you. Like that's how I start. There's nothing wrong with you. You just got programmed in a way, like we all did. You can't avoid programming. You got programmed by your childhood. And because of that, you have certain belief systems and a certain set of assumptions that are largely unconscious. And those unconscious beliefs and assumptions are running your life. All you want to do is know what the hell those things are. So you bring them into the light of consciousness so that you know what they are, so you have more power and control over your life. That's essentially how I think about it. I'm trying to help people understand what their programming is, which is not always easy because we become very attached to it. We become very identified with it. And usually that programming came about in response to things that happened to us that were scary and painful. And people will say, well, no, I had a great childhood. This happens all the time. I'm like, how was your childhood? I think it was great. My parents were great. And then you start asking questions and you're like, what? I've yet to meet a person people have great childhoods, but life is traumatic. There's no escaping that. There's no escaping the pain of life. Like it's built in. And I would say it's a feature, not a bug, right? It's just how life works. So there's no real problem there. And you just have to come to terms with what happened to you with I agree, without making yourself a victim. Now, that said, when you were a child, helpless, vulnerable, you were a victim. If you're beaten by your father as a 5-year-old, you are a victim. And you have a right to be angry about that. And so part of the process that I try to take people through is recognizing first what happened to them, allowing themselves to have the feelings that they have about it, which is usually on some level anger. Like I'm angry at my parents for what they did or what they didn't do. I was ignored or I was abused or I didn't feel seen or understood or nobody cared about my needs, all of that. And, we diminish it. The adult will diminish what happened to us, but that's a defense, right? But if you really look at, you have a little boy out there and you see how innocent and vulnerable they are. And if you were to yell at that kid every day, that's going to do something to that fucking kid. And they're going to, it's going to impact them. It's going to affect them. And you're a big grown man. They're going to be terrified. The kid is already terrified of you just by virtue of the fact that they're helpless and you're this big grown man. Like it's built in. Kids are scared of their father. And which is fine. There's no problem there. And it doesn't, you can love them and hold them and make yourself a safe place for them. But still, the world is scary for a little boy. So, when those feelings get trapped in our body or disowned, you're trying to help people understand them, work through the emotions that they couldn't experience at the time, which a lot is kind of anger. Like, so I try to let people be angry at their parents. Like, I don't want them to stay there. You know, it's part of a process. You have to move through the layers of feelings, right? So, okay, I'm angry at my parents. I understand what happened to me. Okay, you're right. That was bad. I didn't realize that, but actually, I was really hurt by that, or I didn't like that, or was angry about that. Okay, come hit the block, scream at your dad, say all the things you want to say. Fuck you, dad. Fuck you, mom. Where the fuck were you? You're fucking shit. You didn't do anything. I hate you, right? Like let them have that, and that's kind of the kid. It's like the teenager allowing themselves to have all that stuff. And then once you move through that, then you want to take them to the pain, which is a deeper layer of vulnerability. Actually, I was hurt. That was really scary. And then you want to take them to the need. Like, I needed you. Like, you weren't there for me, dad, and I needed you. Or you weren't there for me. I needed you like more. I needed more love. Whatever it is. And ultimately, you're trying to take a person to the acceptance of, this is what happened to me. There's nothing I can do about it anymore. I'm left with this. All I can do is process my feelings, take responsibility for them, stop projecting them out or projecting them inward. In other words, blaming the world or blaming myself, because it's the same thing. Because some people judge other people, some people judge themselves. It's all me. I'm a fuck up. I'm no good. And if you can take responsibility for what happened to you and just accept it, then you kind of come back to neutral. And you can see that all the problems in your life are your problems, that you, on some level, co-create them. And if you want to change your world, change your reality, change the results that you're getting in your life, the only thing you can do is change yourself and change your mindset, which is, to me, the ultimate kind of empowerment. You're saying, I'm not blaming the world. I understand the world's not fair. I understand bad things are going to happen. I understand I might get my heart broken. I understand my business partner might betray me. I understand people are going to lie to me. I can't get out of that. But I'm going to accept the world as it is. I'm going to accept myself as I am. And I'm going to not let that stop me from being all of who I can be. And if I'm with a girl that cheated on me, why did I get with a girl who cheated on me? If I get with a business partner who betrays me, why did I connect with this business partner who betrayed me? Like, was there something why was I attracted to that? Now, sometimes shit just happens, but more often than not, if we really think back to those kind of situations, like let's say you had a girl that cheated on you. This happens every time with my clients. They'll say, yeah. I say, well, was there ever a moment early in the relationship where you had your suspicions? And they're like, yeah. I kind of wondered if they were lying to me about this thing. And I'm like, but you went forward anyway. So you betrayed yourself, right? Like, you had the intuition, but you moved forward anyway. And the same with like a business partner. It's like, was there any sense early on in the relationship that you didn't trust the person fully? And they're like, actually, now that you mention it, yeah, there was this moment where you said this thing and it felt a little off to me, but I moved forward anyway. It's like, well, so in that place, you're always taking responsibility. And that's the ultimate power, right? It's taking full responsibility for everything that happens in your life, even when somebody does harm to you. Well, why am I in a relationship with this person who did harm to me? How did I get involved in this? Like, where did I betray myself? Where am I not being honest with myself? Where am I afraid to say the thing that I want to say, or set the boundary that I need to set? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Every time I think back, it seems like if you would have been fully intact with your intuition, you are the reason you always get yourself in shit, and everything that shit or everything good that happens to you is your responsibility. It's ultimately you're responsible for everything that happens in your life. But I wonder, when does it start? When do you leave the little boy? Because when you're the little boy, it's not the full responsibility. Things happen to you. The world crashes upon you. What age does it change from the little boy to now I'm fully responsible for yourself? Because having a son, you really wonder, can I just program him in knowing depression is not real? You know, will I just tell him that you might feel depressed, but there's no such thing as being depressed. You cannot be or stay depressed. You will just feel depressed and you'll get over it and you'll move on. Or I can program him and tell him that the world is bad and he is depressed, right? And you can do that with your partner. You can do that with your friends. And it's especially crucial, I think, with a child, how you're going to program the child, because you can't be so naive and thinking you're not going to program the child. There's always going to be some sort of programming. So as a father, you really got to think about, how am I going to program this kid, you know? And when does the programming end?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Or when did you realize that you were programmed? Because like I didn't realize I was programmed until I was like 30.
Well, that's usually the age that people start to think about these things.
Yeah, I was a boy till I was 30 years
Yeah,
old.
yeah.
You know, there's no such thing as 21. It's like for
No.
a man, for me at least, I was 30 years old.
Yeah. That's generally the age that people start to question their programming because they start to see patterns in their lives and they start to see that maybe there's things that they don't understand about themselves that are causing them to suffer, essentially. So, you know, that in that moment that there's the realization, then that's when the moment of self-responsibility starts. It's like, okay, what are you going to do about it? I think before that, you know, when you're in your 20s, you're just trying to figure out life, right? You're going with the programming that you have. You're taking what you learned out into the world, and the world is going to reflect back to you who you are. And at a certain point, if you're not getting the results that you want, you have to look at yourself. Well, you have two choices. One, you can blame the world and be angry about it and try to change the world, which is what a lot of people are doing right now. They're not happy, so the world has to change to accommodate me, which is insane because you're just going to create another world and it's going to be the same problem. It doesn't, same issue is going to happen. So you have to change yourself. And I think the other thing to consider is when you ask, when does it start? Well, maybe in some way, if this is all a simulation, maybe we chose our parents. So maybe you could say, I mean, a child is obviously not capable of self-responsibility, but I think that's an interesting frame to look at it. If some aspect of you, some spirit or essence aspect of you from some other dimension in time and space chose to come into this world and have this experience, and you chose those parents, you chose this experience, well, then you're responsible for everything. You're responsible for your parents. So you can't really be angry at them because you chose into this experience. And is that true? Well, we can't know if that's true. I mean, lots of spiritual traditions have said this, so it's not uncommon, but I think it's a useful framework to think about it because it immediately gets you out of the victim mindset. But putting that aside, yeah, I think usually, I mean, when are you going to start talking real to somebody? Like really like, hey, fucking kid, this is your shit. You need to get over it. Is a 21-year-old really going to get that? Maybe some. But, you know, I think 25, 30, that's usually when I started going to this therapy when I was 26 for that exact reason. I knew there was something going on in my mind that I didn't understand. I could feel that there was some force inside me that was driving me, that was motivating me, that was governing me, and I didn't know what the fuck it was. And that was scary. So I'm not free. I don't actually have the free will that I think that I have. So I was determined to get to the bottom of whatever the fuck that was. And it took me a while. I mean, it's a lifetime. And of course, what you realize is you never get to the bottom of it. It's turtles all the way down. It's endless, right? You know, you get out of one matrix and you just figure out you're in another and another and another and another. And at a certain point, all you can do is just accept. Like, this is what the world is. I can't know everything. I can't master. Well, you can master this reality, but the only way to master it is by surrendering. Just Like, this is what it is. I'm going to accept everything, as it is. It doesn't mean that I don't stand up for what's right, but I have to accept that this is the world that I was born into. This is the world. This is me. I have to accept myself and all of my feelings. And more than that, if you really want to get to a kind of deep spiritual connection or Christ consciousness, you have to be willing to love everything. So are you willing to love your pain? Are you willing to love the tragedy in the world, the cruelty in the world? Are you willing to love the cruelty that exists inside you, the shadow in you, right? The parts of yourself that you don't know, the places that we act out and can do harm, because we're all flawed, right? And life is difficult. And so are we willing to love and forgive ourselves as we go? Again, take responsibility, make amends, be accountable, but forgive and love ourselves and those who've done us harm. I think that's the end game. I think that's the only way out of the matrix. And, in the Tate interview, I brought it up and, he couldn't deny it. I'm like, can you fight the matrix? Like, if you're fighting the matrix, aren't you in the matrix? Like, because I think there's only one out of the matrix is to love. And he couldn't, he was like, that's true. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Is that love is the answer.
When he says that it's okay that his dad only like sees him once a year, I saw like a little boy, a hurt little boy. And he didn't even have to say it. Just that he's like, no, he's the best. That's the right way. I don't know. I could like tell, like, I was like, what do you mean? Like, to see your dad like one time a year, And he was like so about it that a dad doesn't have to be present. I don't know. I feel like I felt pain and I felt a little boy.
Yeah.
And it was real. I really believe that he only saw his dad once a year.
Yeah, though that is
he
true.
Didn't like that.
No, how could he?
Yeah.
Who would like that?
Yeah.
People want to be with their dad.
But he just tells himself like that's fine, and that he doesn't need more of his dad. And you ask him, I think, repetitively, like, don't you want to see him more?
Right.
And he denied it.
Yeah.
But I felt like,
listen, we all do what we have to do to get through life, and he's created this mindset for himself. And we talked about it early in the interview. What's useful is more important than what's true. Now, his argument is thinking about it in that way makes me stronger. It's useful for me. So that's the frame that I'm going to put on it. That's the sense I'm going to make of it. And fair enough. Like, I'm not there to talk him out of it or tell them that he's wrong. The argument that I was making was, I think when we're in the truth of our feelings, we're more powerful. And I think that's true. And you don't have to give anything up. That's the main thing that I wanted him to understand. I mean, I made that point, like, you have this sword that you use, and it's sharp and you're really good with it and you love to use it. Okay, but you don't have to use the sword all the time. Like, there's other tools, there's other ways of being, there's other ways of meeting the world. And I think he understood that, and I think the truth is he understood everything that I was saying. But I'll just say this. I have been doing the work that I'm doing for a long time, since 2001. So that's, over 20 years. And I think 12 or 13 years as a facilitator. And the theme that emerges most often is people have a deep longing for the Father. And so you do these processes called family constellations, and internal family systems is a very popular form of therapy right now. And what happens is you it's like an improv almost. Think of it as an improv. And you pick somebody in the group to be your mom, you pick somebody to be your dad, you pick somebody to be your brother. Maybe we talked about this last time.
Like you were my dad.
Right, exactly. Like exactly,
Yeah.
right? and you kind of position them around the room in a way that feels representative of how you experience them emotionally. So most people, not all, but the most common constellation is the mom is close and the dad is further away. And sometimes the dad is just a little bit away. Sometimes he's like way on the other side of the room. Sometimes he's outside the room, right? And what happens is you it's like an improv, and you play yourself as a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, as a 6-year-old, and it's facilitated, and just things start to happen. And if you let yourself just be in the experience of it, I would say, like, over and over and over again, in my experience, these people would end at the end of this process would be in this regress state, a young girl, young boy, 5 years old, whatever it is, screaming, wailing for their father, like, "Daddy, Daddy," just like crying, wailing, pleading for their daddy. I saw this over and over and over and over again. You can imagine the impact that had on me. And often I played the father in these simulations. And that was also my experience, right? My dad wasn't around, first emotionally, but then physically. And so what that taught me was we really underestimate the importance of the role of the father. And I think that is the single biggest problem in society is fathers have, on some level, abdicated their responsibility. They have deferred to women as a product of feminism. And it's reasonable. I did this, right? Like, I grew up when feminism was, I don't know. I mean, there's been many heydays, but feminism was alive and well. And I was told, hey, women have been oppressed and you got to make space for them. So I was like, okay, that sounds reasonable. I want to be a good ally. So I kind of like held back my energy. I stepped back, and that did not serve me well, because it's not what women want. They want men to be all the way in their power. They want them to be in their authority. They don't want them to be abusive. They don't want them to be controlling. But women need men to be in their strength and power, and to be able to challenge women, because sometimes women are full of shit. Sometimes women get it wrong. Sometimes women are overly emotional. Sometimes women are reactive. And if part of a man's job is to hold a container for that, right? And not let her emotions run the whole show. And that's true of just life, the relationship, but also true of raising children. And so that's a big part of what I'm trying to teach people. And it's an edge, I think, for a lot of men. And I think that's precisely why you're seeing Andrew Tate become so popular, is because essentially he's championing that message. Now, he's taking a very extreme position on it, like he's taking the pole, the widest pole of it. Nevertheless, there's a lot of what he's saying. The essence of it is absolutely correct, that there is a masculine feminine dynamic that is of nature. It's not a societal thing. It's not just how we've been conditioned. Men and women are different, and that each of us has a role. Masculine, feminine, yin, yang, they need to be in balance and harmony. And if men are not bringing themselves out fully, not, as I said, claiming their authority, showing up, present, then there's going to be problems. And so that's what the message that I'm trying to preach. And the truth is, that's what women want. Women, when you bring that, I notice in my relationship, like, the biggest problem in the relationship is when I'm holding back. when I'm there's something I want to say that I don't say. Like if I let her, if I go along when I don't want to go along, that's a problem, right? And part of I mean, if you think about it, just masculine, feminine energy, the masculine is the structure. The masculine is the container. The masculine leads. And I always talk about it in terms of dancing. I made a video about this recently that people really liked, which is, in any kind of, let's say, ballroom dancing, the man holds the frame. That's the structure. The man leads. And the feminine, the woman, surrenders to that lead. Like she exists inside the man's frame and then surrenders to his lead. And in that place, she gives up any responsibility for control, which feels great. You know what I mean? He's got it. I don't have to worry about leading. I don't have to worry about the structure. I can just relax and be all the way in my feminine, and I get to feel alive and free and surrendered. That's ecstasy for the feminine. And for the masculine, I think our pleasure is in leading her there. There's a great satisfaction that we get in leading a woman to her pleasure. I mean, it's like we love to make women come. Like men get great satisfaction out of that, and we feel our prowess when our woman orgasms, right? So it's the same thing, and the caveat that I would say is when both people are surrendered to that, the man is leading technically, but if they're attuned to each other, he's leading off of her. He's leading in relationship to her. So you could argue that in some sense, they're both leading the dance. He's just in the role of the one leading it. But there's a greater intelligence that's at work. And that if both surrender to it, then that greater intelligence can emerge. And that's when we get this beautiful place of harmony. So that's a metaphor, but I think it's an apt one for all relationships and all the dynamics between men and women.
That kind of reminds me of when women want to be like CEOs as well, and be in drive planes and do all the things that men do. And in the very end, the men do it for a woman anyways. They make all the money, they drive the fancy car, not to impress another man. It's mostly to find the right woman and impress women. Like, of course, it's cool to have a Lamborghini for your boys, but you also want, like, be attractive with your bank account and your house and whatever. You want to show a woman, I am the one to mate, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
I have all these things I can provide, mate with me.
Yes.
Right? It's a very primitive thing. And then it's so funny that a woman is like, no, I want to make the money now. I want to pay taxes. I want to do all these things. And then everything in this moment, today in time, it feels like it is so out of order. And especially the staying at home woman that dedicates her life to her children is seen down upon.
Yeah.
And then you have all these things like the fluoride in the water, the polyester in the clothes, don't eat red meat, don't go in the sun. Everything that boosts testosterone and makes you into a man is looked down upon, and they really try to demasculate the man as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a conspiracy theorist or not, like, it seems like wherever you look into things, it makes even the normal testosterone level have been lowered to a lower average than what it used to be.
Yeah.
Is that how Andrew Tate says to destroy the family and have it's just much easier to control a society without strong men? Because it's very plausible that if I would want to create something, it's much easier to get that through the public if there's less stronger men.
Yeah. I mean, listen, who knows? But I think it's plausible. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint where the conspiracy actually lies, but everything you just said is true. And of course, if I wanted to conquer the neighboring village, the thing that I would want to do is take out the men. Or, if you're doing a psychological operation, yeah, I'd want to, implant some, a value system where you made it shameful to be a strong man somehow. And then they're much easier to take over. So I think people have a hard time thinking about that stuff because they don't think that that's who human beings are, that we're still primitive. We're basically primates who are still arguing or fighting to the death over territory and resources. But if you actually look at the world, it's exactly what it is. I mean, that's what we're doing. And so it makes sense to me, based on history and based on what we know about human nature, that there would be some force, some group of people. I don't know. I don't even, are these things conscious? Are they unconscious? I have no idea. Is it a group of people sitting at the top? Is it the Russians? Is it the Chinese? I don't know. Is it from within? I mean, I'm open to anything, but it's happening. I mean, it's not an illusion that there's a war against masculinity. I mean,
or even femininity.
Or even femininity. Yeah, it's exactly.
War is against
exactly. Yeah, women who stay at home and raise children very often are seen by certain women as less than women who are going out and having careers. And, what we know from the statistics is that there's a lot of unhappy women out there, 35, 40 years old, who built up their careers and now they have some money in the bank, but they don't have a husband, or they have a man that they're not happy with, because we know from hypergamy, women only date across and up in social status. So the more money that women make, the less men are available to them. And so we see a lot of SSRIs, white wine. I mean, there's a lot of unhappy women. I mean, they can say, oh, women are happier unmarried, but their habits do not suggest that. The amount of drugs that they're taking do not reflect that idea that women are happier now. So I think it's destructive. All this that's been propagated by feminism. I think there's aspects of feminism that were good and necessary. I think there was a time when women really were oppressed. And so I understand the impulse. People want to be free. And if you felt like you were locked in a gender role you couldn't get out of, you're not free. And so I understand the impulse and I'm sympathetic to it. But at the end of the day, we're animals, right? And we have a nature. And if we go against our nature, we're not going to be happy and we're going to suffer. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot of out there.
Why should we bring bullying back? I saw Tristan Tate like that tweet.
Mm-hmm.
Bring back bullying.
Yeah. I said it's time to bring back bullying. The nerds are out of control.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, I got that
That's
idea.
A bold thing to say as a therapist.
Yeah. Well, I get in a lot of trouble, for some of my thoughts and beliefs as a quote unquote therapist. But also, I think people like it that I'm bold and, controversial. I mean, not everybody. That's going to turn off some people, but that's okay. I think I'm trying to model, I'm trying to practice what I preach, which is like, I want to be free. So I don't want to be super careful. I mean, I'm a little bit careful, but yeah, I don't want to be afraid to be controversial. And also, everybody should take what I say with a grain of salt, because I can be a bit of a comedian myself, or what they call in the Lakota, heyoka, which is somebody who goes in the opposite direction, a provocateur, essentially. Well, actually, that tweet came from something that Andrew said, that this is the first time in human history where the nerds are running the world. You have all these tech geeks who are, they have all this power, the Zuckerbergs and all the rest of them. I mean, I don't know where I'd put Musk in that category, but the problem there is they're disembodied, right? They're all in their head. And that's a dangerous place to be, to think that you are smarter than nature. And listen, I understand everybody wants to change the world. Everybody's trying to improve the world, for sure. But I think there's some kind of tech utopia that these people are pushing that feels very fucking dangerous to me. And I don't know exactly what their relationship is with God, but they're not smarter than God. AI is amazing. Have you taken a look at the sky? Like, look at a tree, okay? Or just examine your own fucking brain for 2 seconds, and you'll realize AI is nothing compared to the intelligence that exists on this planet. This whatever this is. Like, we're so remedial. And I think it's important that we're humble to that. And that's my concern with the tech bros, is that they're a little disembodied. They're a little in their heads. They think they have it all figured out. They think that everything is going to be solved by technology. And that's scary to me. It's simple. If you look at the 10 Commandments, do not worship a false idol. And I think technology has become a false idol for a lot of people. And I love technology. I respect it, science, all of that. But I think we have to be really careful. All we have to do is look at history, and we know that this kind of thinking, this sense of utopia, that knowing or thinking that you're better than, or that you're special, or that you're unique, or like our little group is going to change the world. I think that kind of thinking, to me, feels kind of culty and a little dangerous. So that was sort of the impetus behind the tweet, that we need to start bullying these people, because I don't trust people that are not in their body. I don't trust Alexander Cortez. Do you know him? Do you follow him?
Mm-mm.
Ajax.
Mm-mm.
He's fucking great, man. Alexander Juan Antonio Cortez. He said, bro, do you even lift? Is a perfectly legitimate question to ask somebody if I'm going to consider taking their opinion seriously. And I think that's right. And I think the point he's making, if somebody doesn't demonstrate a certain kind of discipline, if they're not in their body, if they don't know their body, if they don't exist in their body, if they're not working out, like something, right? Then in a way that's like that they feel the animal that is them, I don't trust them. I don't. I don't trust these fucking nerds that are all up in their head and think that their ideas are the only thing that matters. I don't trust that, because I think there's a deep, obviously I'm biased because I'm a somatic psychotherapist, but I think there's a deep intelligence and wisdom in the body, in nature, that always we have to defer to that, to surrender to that. There is a knowing beyond the rational mind. The rational mind has limits, right? It's just a tool. But once you make it the God, like just even the belief that human beings are rational, it's just like, it's absurd. Like, there's no evidence of that. Like, we're constantly doing insane things. Look at the world. Where is it that we're rational? We're not rational at all. We rationalize. And I'm not saying rational thought doesn't exist, but the idea that we can see our own mind, and if you follow the work of Daniel Kahneman, you read Thinking Fast and Slow, and I was heavily influenced by that book. And I remember he did a podcast with Sam Harris, and all of his study was on the human mind and cognitive biases, just basically the way we fool ourselves and how the mind works. And, he said that humans are essentially not capable of rational thought. So all scientific experiments are flawed because the scientific experiment involves a human being, and human beings have bias. So there's a bias involved in the setting up of the experiment or the interpretation of the result. And so Sam Harris says, well, what do we do about that? How do we overcome it? And he's like, we can't. It's like, it's built in. Like, I know this. I'm the expert on this. I study this, and I fool myself all the time. I convince myself that I know something or that it's right, only to later find out that I was deluding myself, right? So it's just once you know and understand the fallibility of human nature, I think that's when you just have to surrender. So yeah, these people who've like, I've got it figured out, I don't trust.
You used to be an actor, but when you are a true actor, you are just that character in that moment, no? And don't we all play a character? So how are you a better actor than other people? Or how did you make it in Hollywood?
Yeah, no, well, that's a deep, you're asking a very deep question.
Because when we shoot TikToks, I try not to act. When I'm in that moment fully. And then it's becoming true acting because I am that character. I am the rich asshole in the Lamborghini and I throw the money. I don't try to like act that. I try to be it, you know? And I am it.
Yes.
And I convince myself in that moment that I am that character, which seems, if you do that full time, seems dangerous, especially if you have, if you play a murderer or a rapist.
Yeah.
And people lose themselves
That's
in
right.
characters.
That's right.
And why do we like the same story told by different stories told by the same actors? I've always wondered, why don't we want always movies? Wouldn't it be much more believable if it was new actors in every movie?
Mm-hmm.
No. I want to see David play the dad, play the father, play the brother, play a poor man, play a rich man, whatever it is. Or I like to see like Johnny Depp be in all these movies, even though I know we're so in tune in like stories. We love a good story.
Yeah.
Storytelling is everything.
Yeah.
Even with the same characters or the same person.
Yeah. Well, I that's a good question, that last question you asked.
Like it doesn't bother us at all. The opposite, really. You feel more confident with Brad Pitt being in another role.
Right.
You go to the movies rather seeing him again playing a different character, which makes no sense. Why? Like you choose that comfort almost of like knowing somebody to tell you another story.
Yeah. No, that's right. It is comfortable. It's familiar, and so I think what happens is it pulls you into the story quicker. You're willing to go along because it's
even
Tom
though you
Cruise.
know it's an actor.
You know it's an actor, exactly, and that's why Quentin Tarantino is so interesting because he casts against type very often. So he takes somebody who used to sing it a certain way and then puts them in a different dynamic and kind of turns it on his head. And that's why his movies are so, not the only reason, but one of the reasons that his movies are so interesting and exciting. But going back to your earlier question, I agree with you. Like when I didn't think about acting as I'm playing a character, I'm actually trying to play myself as true as possible in every moment. Myself in those circumstances. That's how I approached it. That's how I thought about it. Unless you're, playing somebody who's got an accent or is a very extreme version of you. But I didn't play a lot of those characters, and I wasn't really interested in doing that for whatever reason. Playing some alien, like I got auditions for Star Trek, and it's like, you're going to play this alien and, you're going to have to wear all this makeup, and it's going to be an hour and a half of makeup. And I was like, an hour and a half of makeup every morning? Fuck that. Like I wanted a hospital show where I could just put on, the hospital stuff that they wear. That was really easy. I was, I think I was in acting to learn something about myself, to try to get more present, to try to it was an exploration for me. I mean, it was a business and there was creativity in it. But when I look back at it now, it was really just, I wanted to find out more about myself. And I thought that was an interesting way to do it. And I did. I found out a lot about who I was, and because it forces you to get present, right? The camera reads presence. I mean, you know that from TikTok, right? As you just said, like I am that character in that moment. And that's why your videos are so great. because it doesn't feel like a performance. You dissolve into the moment and it feels like you are that guy, and you are that guy in that moment. And that is an aspect of you. It's not something outside of you. You're expressing something true about yourself. Like yes, it's an act, but it's part of you, right? And that's what's so interesting. And it must have been, really fun for you to be able to explore that aspect of you and give yourself permission to go there. And it was the same for me in a different way. But yeah, I think in some way we're always acting all the time. Everything is a performance to some degree. I mean, even right now in this moment, like I'm aware that I'm on a podcast, I'm being recorded, that people are going to watch it. So there's some part of my brain that is monitoring what I say and how I say it because of that. And so that creates a little separation between me and the moment. So the game that I'm trying to play with myself is how do I surrender deeper and deeper into the presence of this moment? Because I know that's going to be the best thing for the podcast, that I'm going to speak the most truth, and it'll be the most interesting. And yet I'm also aware that this is for public consumption. So I'm not, I can't say everything. I can't say it exactly because, I can't talk about certain things just out of respect, not because I'm afraid to say the thing, but to be respectful of other people. And also I have a career and I have to think about that. And so that's like, there's a real tension point there. And I think we're doing that all the time in all kinds of situations. And every person that we encounter, whether we're aware of it or not, we're unconsciously assessing them and coming into some kind of relationship with them. And there's an element of performance in how we show up for them. I don't think you can get out of that. I think it's built in. I think it's part of like human design, right? Like we're looking to attune to people. We're looking to find the connection points. And so what I'm always trying to do is be aware of how I'm showing up, but mainly not to betray myself, like to really not go against myself, to really not try to manipulate or control what is I'm saying for effect. Because I think ultimately, one, it doesn't work. Two, it's boring. And three, it's dishonest. And maybe that gets you so far, a little ways. But at the end of the day, I think, or at least my goal is I'm just trying to be as authentic as I can be, which is not an easy thing to do because I'm not always authentic to myself. I don't always know what I'm thinking. Sometimes I do things and I think it's the right thing, and then I look back, I'm like, no, wasn't the right thing to do. Why did I do that? What was motivating me there? And so it's a constant exploration into that. Like, where did I lose presence? Where did I betray myself? Where was I not authentic to myself? And why? And so even, like I just said, in this moment, like that's alive for me right now, as it must be for you on some level. I just think it's how life works.
And you can feel that the moment I stop record, you can feel it change.
Mm-hmm.
Instantly.
Yeah.
There's something that falls.
Yes.
Once the cameras don't record.
I know.
Even though you don't start saying crazy shit, but also that has happened before, that I had a guest that as soon as I stopped recording, they said crazy shit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yo, why
I know.
Why were you holding back for 2 hours? And now that I stopped recording, you're saying crazy shit. That's
right.
Mad interesting. You're mad present.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, all the time.
And you know what? That's what I hate the most about social media.
Yeah.
It used to be fun, and now they created this avatar, and you can only be yourself. And you have to be like correct in everything. Like you have to be a nice person, kind of.
Yeah.
Because I always love to troll online and like play an asshole and like have fun with it and not always like do what's right, kind of. Like it's supposed to be for entertainment purposes.
Yeah.
And I always love this quote where they say like the the worse or like the more evil the villain, the better the movie, kind of.
Yeah.
The softer the villain, the more the movie sucks. You know, if you have like a soft ass villain that nobody's afraid of, it's not a good movie.
Yeah.
You need that tension, and you need like the more evil the villain is. And that's how I see a lot of like my TikToks and my social media is like you need some sort of like there needs to be the yin and yang. There needs to be you need some conflict. You know, every Kardashian episode has some sort of conflict. That's what people like to watch. Like, and that doesn't work anymore because now whatever you say online, that is you. They created this like new persona of yourself, and you have to present yourself. You can't be say anything political, or you can't be an asshole, and you can't offend somebody. You need to be respectful, right? And you have all these things. And it used to be like when an actor is playing an evil role, nobody would be like, oh my God, Johnny Depp is like actually a bad person, or I'm so offended by his role. No, everybody would be okay with him playing an evil role. But you can't do that on social media because then you get canceled.
Well, maybe you can, because listen, there's people who understand that all of social media is a reality show. It's not real.
Yeah.
And there's people who don't. And the people who don't, who think it's real life, they're going to judge you. They're going to make you bad. They're going to say, oh, Candy Ken's a racist, or whatever the fuck they're going to say, right? And they're going to say that I'm, some of the things that I said earlier, that I'm a sexist, or whatever. And that's fine, because they're very attached. They're very attached to the story. But I remember talking to Mike Cernovich. I don't know if you know who Mike Cernovich is, but
also not.
And so he's a very interesting guy. I mean, you'll follow these guys. They're Twitter guys. But Mike is one of the most famous online trolls ever. I mean, he's a fucking master. And he's so funny and so smart. I mean, he's very, very, very smart guy, which is why I got away with it. And when I first started following him, because I'd heard like, oh, Cernovich, and I followed him when he was like 40,000 followers. And he came up, and, there's something interesting about him, but I started following him, and I was like, this guy's a fucking idiot. I mean, what's he talking about? Like, it just seemed like nonsense. And then I saw that this guy, Naval Ravikant, followed him. And Naval Ravikant is like the Buddha of Silicon Valley. He's like one of the smartest, most interesting people in the country, and just a very measured man. And I had a lot of respect for him. I was like, what the fuck is Naval following Cernovich for? Like, okay, maybe there's something I don't understand. So then I started to pay attention to what Mike was doing. And then I saw the game that he was playing. He was fucking with people, right? But he knew what he was doing. So he had this consciousness around it. And he built up this massive following. And now he's got 1 million followers. And he's got a lot of power and influence in the culture with the things that he writes. And I got to know him a little bit, and we were at a party once, and I asked him, like, how did you navigate your way through that? I mean, there's people who think you're a fucking psycho. They think you're like the devil. Like, if you go to his Wikipedia page, it's just like they just blast him nonstop. And he said, I realized early on that this whole society is just like pro wrestling. It's just pro wrestling. Nothing's real. And I decided I was going to play the part of the heel. I'm going to be the bad guy. And I just play my role. But he knows that he's playing the role. So when we know we're playing a role, we don't have to take the criticism personally, right? Like, there's a lot of power in like knowing that I'm just playing a role. I'm playing a character, but somebody else thinks it's real. But I know what's actually real. And then you're less affected by it. Like, so there's a kind of detachment that takes place. And I think that's what Tate understands. I think that's what Donald Trump understands. I think that's why people hate Donald Trump, because he sees that the whole thing is an illusion, right? It's like what is the famous line by Terence McKenna? The shaman understands that the culture is just a game. Everybody else takes it seriously. That's how he can work his magic. And so are you willing to look at life as just, It's just a game. It's just stories. It's not real. It's like even life is just social media. It's a reality show, and people are bought into it. They're identified with it. They think it's real, but it's not in the way that we think it is. And so if you can separate yourself from that, then you can just play the game like a video game, and you can play any character you want, and you can have fun with it. You can do whatever you want. You can like literally generate whatever reality you want. And I think that's the edge that people are starting to play with. Obviously, like you have, whether you're like consciously or unconsciously, like you have a strong intuition about that because that's what you did. You know, you created a character in the video game, and you had a lot of fun with it, and did really well with it. So I that's not how I grew up. You know, I had to come to that. And it's not an easy thing to come to because you then you have to give up all your illusions, like to actually realize that the world is full of shit. Like the news is not real. Like all these people that I grew up trusting that I thought, oh, that they're the authorities. This is all real. That war happened because of this, and this is what's going on. To realize, like, wait a minute. Like that was all bullshit. Like everything I've been told is bullshit. Is like anything in history real? Because I'm watching it in real time. I see what's happening, and then I see how they talk about it, how they explain it, and all these people buy into it. I'm like, that is not what fucking happened at all. That is not. And then you just realize, like, reality is just, it's a story that people tell themselves, and if enough people believe that story, it becomes real. But I don't have to buy into it. I can stay separate from it. If I don't care, okay, you can have your story over there. I don't give a fuck. And if I think that's like Neo. I think that's what the Matrix is about. Like when he got out of the Matrix, he realized it's not real. Underneath, it's just code, right? But this person standing in front of me, they're just a projection. And it's all one thing. And then in that moment, you know, he can catch bullets with his teeth and just, you know, do whatever he wants. And I think we're starting to understand. I mean, I think I see that with Trump. I mean, he's just, we talked about it. He's a comedian.
The best comedian ever.
He's the best comedian ever. It's like, it's all it's on some level, it's all a performance. It's all an act. And you could say, well, we can't have a president like that, you know, because all of these world affairs. It's like, that's what the whole world is. And so that's exactly the president you want, the guy who understands reality on the deepest level. And, you know, I understand there's people out there who think that's crazy, but I don't know, man. I think that's the truth that more people are waking up to. And it's scary because it's almost like the timelines have split. And there's people who really understand the true nature of reality. And there's people who are still living inside the Matrix and think it's all real. Everything that they read is real. And I think those timelines have split. And I don't know what's going to happen, but those two things can't ultimately coexist forever. But I feel like that, like the awareness and the consciousness has evolved. So those of us who really see that and get that and understand that, and who are not attached to that old version of reality, which will inevitably crumble, like every version of reality that came before us has crumbled. Every structure, it only lasts for a period of time, that we're going to be onto something new. So, but right now we're in the middle of this, you know, crumbling of the old and building of the new. And so it's a kind of civil war, spiritual battle, like for what truth is, it feels like is what's going on.
When I started social media, I just always knew it was impossible to project the real you online. It was just impossible. So I never even tried to show myself who I am online.
Yeah.
I always thought it was way more fun to just troll everybody.
Yeah.
Like you said, like just to play the more fun character than to have this like, and then also like, there's so many moments in my life where I'm like, I don't actually know who I am. So how can I create an avatar? I might as well just have fun with it and play the funnest role than to like figure it out.
Well, I think that's why you're so interesting, because you get something. You understand something, and maybe it's just in the zeitgeist. And, you know, I mean, I did not understand that at your age. I was heavily in the Matrix, but there's something that you understand. I think that's why you're successful, because you're playing with reality and you're having fun with it. And that's very attractive. It's also going to be very provocative. I've seen the comments on the video we made. It's like, oh yeah, Candy Ken used to be cool. Now I moved to Texas and he's hunting and he's all like right wing. And I'm just like,
Red pilled.
Yeah, you got red pilled. Yeah. And they're disappointed.
Yeah.
And of course, right? The same thing for me. It's like Christopher on Gilmore Girls, he's a right wing wacko. It's like, okay, all right, sure. It's fine. And it was painful, because I did have this fan base and then they turned on me. Not all of them. The best is when it's like based Christopher, because I do have some fans, Gilmore Girls fans who love me, who get it. But no, that's why I'm interested in you, because there's something you get and understand, and you see it in the videos. There's a playfulness to it. There's an intelligence in it. You're not just running around like some maniac. It's not stupid. Like and I didn't know this until we talked about it. Like you're about something. Like there's commentary there. There's something underneath the surface, and you can imagine that would be hard for somebody to see. This guy's running around in a fucking pink hat, throwing money around with the teeth and the whole thing. It's like it's hard to see past that. But in some way, you're doing the same thing that what I described Cernovich is doing. You're playing a role. This is the character you played in this pro wrestling, in this reality show, and you had fun with it. And that's ultimately that's why I think it was so attractive to people. That's what was attractive to me when I finally saw you. Because there's a lot of guys out there doing a version of what you were doing. But I was like, this guy's having a good time. And there's something smart about him. And there's like an awareness to what he's doing that makes it compelling. And even, I think, children, because I'm sure it's a lot of kids who watch you, I think they don't get it intellectually, but they get it on some level. Like I think kids are generally drawn to things that have a kind of intelligence to them. They can feel something true in it. It's not just, the pink and the glam and all of the outlandish things. I think even children respond to things that are have a consciousness to it, have an awareness, have an intelligence,
and maybe presence.
Right. Yes. Presence. Absolutely.
Because they're so present.
Well, you can't be present unless you're aware, and there's that kind of intelligence is there. So, but right, because kids are relentlessly present.
Mm-hmm. And they see presence.
Yeah.
They recognize real.
Yeah.
And then also really fun, lately I found out, is when you flip your character. I love doing that. That used to be always one of my favorite things, is combining things that are not supposed to go together. Like I always love to combine like Hello Kitty and muscles, grills and pink, and like the thug with the cute kawaii, the American hip hop rap scene versus like the Japanese kawaii scene. Like I love to like crush even me in the hunting outfit, still in the well, what they turn into like the LGBTQ room,
right?
Which is just a rainbow room in my eyes. But I love how like opposites, and also like to flip the character, and how it crushes people. It crushes people. They think you are a certain way, and you have to stay that way because they stay their way. And I think people are so stuck in their character. Like, just try something new,
right.
Like, it's like vegans and meat eaters and like, I don't know, life is about like trying different things out. And I really wanted to come to Texas and try this faithful life. I've done the generous in LA for so long, after like almost 10 years of being degenerate, doing like OnlyFans and showing my dick online and like spending a lot of money on Gucci and like buy all the designer that I could possibly imagine. And sitting in supercars, I thought, man, I want to now hunt and provide and be faithful.
Yeah.
Yeah. because you get bored of your character too.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you want to give yourself a new experience and see what that feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool that you're able to do that and make that transition. And yes, I'm sure it's very confusing and upsetting for some of your fans, but just listening to you talk, it just seems to me that fundamentally you're just an artist. Like you're a creative person. Like you want to create. And
and you're still a little boy.
Yeah.
In the camouflage or in the pink Speedo. It's a my little boy self just trying to have fun and figuring things out. And it used to be so easy when you're like a little kid. And I had this box. I'll never forget. My favorite toy was this costume box of my mom that she gave me. Like it's like a little box, and it had like, I don't know, like a king outfit and a dragon outfit and like, I don't know, princess outfit, and you could just throw on a character and be that character for that moment. And as a kid, you are that. You play that, but you are that, and you could just switch all the time, from being whoever you want to be. And I think people lose that.
Yeah,
they get stuck in that.
Yeah. Well,
because like you said, you were an actor, and then you have to redefine your values and who you are as a person, and you have to realize that you are not that person anymore. And that's a hard thing to do, I think, to like let go of something you used to really identify with.
It is a hard thing to do. It was a hard thing to do because I was so identified with it, and that's how I made my living. And
like your ego.
It's just all ego.
Holds on to that.
The ego holds on to it. Absolutely. That's why it's so hard to change. Because we're afraid to enter into the unknown. And yeah, the ego attaches to an identity, which is not really the true self. So if we can let go of that and understand there is a self that is beyond that or deeper than that, then we can just play with life. We can play with the characters. We can show up in different ways at different times, or we can do what you did, and in a sense, what I did. It's like, leave one thing behind and move to another. And people ask me all the time, it's like, where did you find the courage to, you had this career as an actor and you were doing pretty well, and why would you leave it behind? It's like, well, I was tired of it. I did it, and I got a lot more success than I ever thought I did. I never thought I was going to make it. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was just glad I was able to work for 20 years and make a living as an actor and have, a little bit of a success. So I was quite satisfied with what I achieved. And then I just became interested in something else. It was that simple. And I was being compelled in a different direction. And so I left it behind. And it was funny. I've told this story where right when I was in that transition, I was kind of early 40s, and I'd left Hollywood. I was living in Toronto. I was still working in TV in Toronto, but I was out of Hollywood, and I knew that I was winding down, and I was going to make this transition. And I went back to this party in LA. It was an Emmy party, big Emmy party, and all the stars were there. And I hadn't been at a party like that in a long time, but my old manager called me up. I happened to be in LA. So we went, I got dressed up, and it was a lot of fun. And I started to talk to all these people that I knew, and a lot of them very famous people, successful, award-winning. And they're like, "Hey, how you been? Been a long time. Good. Oh, yeah." And what are you up to? I haven't seen you around. I'm like, I'm in Toronto now. I got out of Hollywood and I'm doing this other thing. And I thought they were going to look at me and like, oh, you couldn't hack it, or, it didn't work out for you. And every single person was like, you got out. Like they looked at me with admiration. And it shocked me that they were admiring of my courage to leave and do something else. And in some way, actually, in that moment, I felt a little sad for them. I'm like, well, you feel like you're stuck in this. You wouldn't have had that reaction unless some part of you didn't feel like you were stuck. even though you're successful, even though you're making lots of money, like you're in some way you're now ruled by this thing, and it is a problem. That's why I'm glad I never got too famous. I mean, I was a little famous. You know, Gilmore Girls is a very, very popular show. But man, if you are really a famous person, you know, you're Tom Cruise, you're Brad Pitt, you're Ben Affleck. I mean, that's it. It's over. Like you can't go anywhere. You can't live a regular life. I couldn't do what I'm doing now had I become that kind of famous. People wouldn't take me seriously, and they'd be coming to my workshops or whatever it would be for all kinds of other motivations, right? Like most people who come to my workshops now, they don't even know that I was an actor, or they've heard about it, but they don't care because I've been doing this for so long. So it is, man, it's a trap. And, you know, now I'm glad I didn't get caught in it. And we'll see what the next incarnation is. I don't think I'm done. I think there's more things that I want to do, and it never changes for me. It's like as soon as I land somewhere and get what I want, I'm like, okay, what's next? It's never ending, and that's just how I am. It sounds like it's how you are. Not everybody's like this. I think some people like to, you know, work, get a job, and they work at the job for 40 years, and they like the stability. I think that's a real thing, you know. And even when I think of like Howard Stern, you know, I used to listen to Howard Stern all the time. He's been doing the same thing for 40, 50 years, however long it's been. I don't think could never do that. I mean, I know he's got a great job and he just gets on the radio and talks all day, but it's like at a certain point, I'd be like, okay, I got this. I'm bored of this. So, but that's what he does and that's what he loves. But I have to constantly be changing and evolving and growing and trying new things. And just, I want to go where life takes me. And sometimes that's takes me into the unknown. Sometimes it's scary. Sometimes I take a financial hit because of it. You have to leave some money on the table and move forward. But I don't have any regrets about any of it. It's like, yeah, I want to live free. I want to enjoy my life and to not, I don't know, to let go of all the constraints, the demands that are placed on people about how to be. I think that's all over. And which is also an exciting, something that's exciting about at this moment in time. It's like the rules are out the window. Like you can really do whatever the fuck you want. Like it's you know, you have access to the whole world, the web, you know, all the things that are available to us. Like you really can do whatever you want. And this is a new phenomenon, you know, like back in the day, if you were born in a small village, son of a baker, you're probably going to be a baker. You know, that was it. But now you know, look at you. You came from Austria, came to LA, you made a name for yourself, and now you're in Austin, Texas, trying on a new costume, so to speak, playing a new character, and having a good fucking time while you do it. It's awesome.
It really is like that. And it's harder, I guess, for older generations to grasp that. You know, Kanye just posted if you miss the old shit or the music or whatever, just go listen to my old shit then. You know? He's
right.
Like, if you miss the old Kanye, then go listen to the old Kanye. Because like I'm onto some new shit. And especially by people like him, it's mostly misunderstood. You know? Or like Mozart's music got celebrated long after his death. And a lot of people is like in that moment they can't even receive the flowers, and later on he will be celebrated. But I feel like a lot of times people, you just get bored of certain things. And I think the being free is the ultimate, and being aware of what role you play. Because like your actor friends, it's not that their life isn't great, it's more that knowing that you have to keep playing this role can eat you up.
Yeah.
It's not that it's not a good role, and living in the Hollywood Hills and driving a nice car is a nice role, but even the biggest palace becomes a cage once you can't leave it.
That's right.
You know, and knowing that eats you up.
Yeah. Well, that's why I tweet some of these provocative things, because I don't want to be caught in the role of the therapist, because that's a role. Mm-hmm. You got to be nice. You got to be understanding. You got to see both sides of everything all the time. You have to be measured. That's not me. Now I can put that on. If I'm in a workshop, it's not that I put it on. It's an aspect of me. It's a kind of a level of consciousness that I can tap into and work from that place where it's just I can see everything is neutral. Everything is one thing. There is no right or wrong. There is no good or bad. It's just all an expression of life, and I can hold that. But I'm not holding that all the time. There's another part of me that's like, that's fucking bullshit. That guy's an idiot. Fucker, And I just don't want to, I don't want to be trapped in like being measured and reasonable all the time. It's no fun, because people ask me all the time, why you tweeting out this thing? I'm like, it's fun. It's fun. Because I want to, because like I was sitting there and that's what came through me. And so I'm going to express myself in that moment. It's like, well, that, don't you think you have a responsibility? It's like, a responsibility to what? To who? I have a responsibility to be authentic to myself. And if I take a hit because of that, if somebody doesn't want to come to my workshop or thinks, that I'm being inappropriate for the role that I'm in, then it's like, okay, well, then I'm not, I'm not for you. You should go see somebody else. But that's the tension point. I don't want to get caught in any role. I don't want to be tied down by anything. I want to be free. I want to be able to shift it up at any time. That said, it takes a lot of courage because as you go, you're going to take a lot of hits. People who loved you are going to say, what the fuck happened? Where'd you go? I like the old you. Now there's this person. I don't like the new you.
The new Kanye.
Yeah, you've disappointed me.
Yeah.
You let me down.
But you almost have to.
You have to. It's your obligation.
Otherwise you lose yourself.
That's right. Yeah. Right. You're a slave.
You're a slave to your fans. Like, even my parents are like, you shouldn't, are you not worried about posting that or like doing this or doing that? And I'm like, I'm not a slave to my fans. I do what I want. I have to almost piss them off.
That's right.
It's like when Elon said, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, that like, when I saw that video, it like makes me so happy. Somebody like, it's so authentic. That authenticity kills you. It's like, fuck, like somebody really, and that's like also when I listen to Andrew Tate, it's just so authentic.
Yeah.
When he goes on Rumble and does his speeches, it's just so refreshing. Yeah. Also with Kanye, it's just so refreshing to see somebody not hold back.
Yes. It's alive. They feel free, and it doesn't mean they're always right about everything or they have the perfect perspective. Of course not. But they're letting something come through them. They're free in that place, and to me, that's the highest value. So people like, I love Kanye, and I love that you brought him up.
The old Kanye?
I love all the Kanyes. Every Kanye's fucking amazing. People are like, oh, he's gone crazy. I'm like, I don't know, maybe, but he's all in. The dude is all fucking in on something, on following something. And he seems to be doing it at all costs. And he's paid a heavy price. And that is the thing that most people don't, that's a price that most people don't want to pay. If you want to be free, you're going to pay the price because there's a culture out there, they're not free. They're not free inside themselves. They don't give themselves permission. And they think that kind of freedom is wrong. Right. And they're very attached to the tribe and they're very attached to staying connected. And so when they see, it's like the crab that tries to get out of the bucket, the other crabs will pull it back down. It takes a lot of strength and courage to like come out all the way and be who you are and say the things you think, because you are going to suffer at the wrath of lots of people who are going to make you bad and wrong. And if you don't have a really strong internalized sense of self and you're not connected to some larger mission, if you're not like in alignment with God, that's what the best thing I think Kanye said. And I know he's not the first person to say it, but they asked him, like, aren't you afraid of turning off your audience? And he said, I only play for an audience of one, meaning God. And I was like, that's fucking bad. That's it. That's who I want to play for. It's like, it's just between me and God. It's between me and spirit. Because as soon as I'm trying to like do it for the audience, then I've lost myself. I've betrayed myself. Yeah. Right. So it should only be for God. And you could parse what that means out. Somebody else might say, an artist might say, well, it's my obligation, my responsibility is to always be true to myself, to not consider the audience, but just be true to myself. And we hear Rick Rubin going on podcasts talking about that. He's like, I make music that I want to make, that I like, I please myself, right? I make the song that I want to hear. I don't think about the audience, right? And that's how I think about it. I make a social media post. I'm not thinking about a strategy. I'm just like, I wake up in the morning and I have an idea and that's interesting. And I kind of flush it out and then make a little video and I put it up there and, we'll see. Sometimes people like it. Sometimes they don't. I don't know. But I'm not going to monitor everything or try to get views or likes just to what, it doesn't, that's not the game I want to play.
That's what Candy Can is all about. Candy Can was always what I like.
Right.
He does all the things I want to do and that I like. And he's my escape out of the programmed social persona that my parents and my surroundings have built over the years. He's like my outbreak, my true inner unicorn or inner self or inner spirit or whatever it is. It's people always ask like, who's Jacob or Jakob and who's Candy Can and where is, but I am both.
Right.
I'm all of it. One is the suppressed me, one is the crazy me, but it's all me. And I never thought about my audience. That's why it's so weird when they think they own you, because now that I changed it, they say you can't change it because you're a queer baiter. And I'm like, first of all...
A what? A queer baiter?
Yeah, or a gay baiter.
Why? What is that? What do you mean?
You like bait the gays because I am in a rainbow room and I put on Speedos and I work out. You try to like make money of pretending that you're gay, which is the most insane...
Gay people can't wear camouflage and go hunting?
Which is the most narrow-minded mindset that you can have. Not only that, first of all, gay people hunt and love Trump too.
Of course.
Right? What are you even saying? And also, like, how crazy is it to take a rainbow and ultimately, it's like how racism starts, that you are like, this is me and you are them and you can't do what I do, right? We own the rainbow.
Yeah.
So I cannot dress rainbow or be in a rainbow room because they own it.
Right.
It's insane to me.
No, it's insane. It's insane. Well, listen, there's a lot.
But it's also fun.
Well, I guess that's a question. There is something. Yeah, there's fun. I mean, I've made videos that are heavily provocative. I mean, just even interviewing Tate, a lot of people were like, "What the fuck? Why would you give him a platform? Why would you give him a platform? What are you talking about? The guy's hilarious. Like he's super famous. I'm supposed to turn down an interview with that guy because you don't like the shit he says?
No, and shouldn't you talk to exactly the person you disagree with or that you don't like?
That's what I would say.
Or you only want to talk to people that you agree with?
There's zero people that I wouldn't interview. You know,
Joe Rogan always says you have to follow people that you like and that you don't like. If you only follow people that you like, you'll create a bubble.
Of course. You should follow people that you don't like who are intelligent and make good arguments that challenge your mindset. Of course. You know, that's really... that's important if you want to be intellectually honest. But this whole thing about, the rainbow flag, I don't know. It's sad to me that it feels like we've regressed in some way. Like, I mean, identity politics. Identity is literally like ego. We should reframe it as ego politics. It's like, it's a kind of narcissism. I mean, it is narcissism.
It is narcissism.
It's like, who I am, how I dress, my identity is paramount. It's like your identity it's not even real. None of it's real. Like there's a you behind that's the real thing. And when I'm with somebody, that's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm paying attention to. I don't give a fuck what you're wearing. I don't give a fuck what pronouns you use. I don't care. I don't care what color your skin. I don't give a fuck. I understand that everybody has their own unique experiences and that if you have brown skin, you might have a different experience in life than if somebody has white skin. But underneath that, it's all the fucking same. We're all the same. We're all human. We all are longing to be loved and to give our love and to be creative and to feel significant and to make a contribution. Nobody's different. And people come to my workshops, all different, everybody, every kind of person has been in my workshops. And at the core, everybody's exactly the fucking same, right? They have a different story. And that story, again, may be impacted by who they are, but underneath it, it's all one thing. And that's the place we should be meeting in, not having ridiculous conversations about identity and, who owns the rainbow flag. To me, it's demonic, honestly. It's a subversive force, and it's a symptom of a disassociation from God. That's what I see. That's, and I know that's a kind of a strong thing to say, but that's how I experience it. Because once you know God, once you really know God, everything else is bullshit. It's just, now not everybody knows God. And I'm not trying to profess a certain kind of, religious outlook. And I understand God is a loaded word. So you can change that to say like nature, like life, the universe, but there's an intelligent force that's created all of this somehow, some way. There was something else operating here that we don't understand or comprehend. And, if you orient to that, if you relate to that, the deepest truth, it's like, stop paying attention to the icons on the screen and understand that underneath the icons is all of this incredibly complicated source code. That's what reality is. It's not the icons. It's not what you're wearing. It's like there's something underneath. There's this intelligence, and that's in all of us. And that's the thing that we should be identifying with. And if we all identified with that, we would realize that we're all the same. We're all one, and we're not defined by all of this nonsense. So that's why I say that people who are caught up in that it is literally separated from God. They're separated from the truth, right? And that's why they're so angry and motivated by resentment.
Because if you don't do God's work, you do the devil's work.
That's right. That's how it works. It's how it works. Serve God or serve your own ego. It's one of the two. And listen, you know how I know? I've been caught up in it. I was in Hollywood serving my own ego. I know exactly what this is because I lived it. I experienced it. I was selfish. I wanted what I wanted. And I got it. And you know what happened? I was miserable and I suffered and I was addicted and lost. And I couldn't figure it out. What the fuck? I have everything I want. I got lots of money. I'm on a TV show. I'm dating a movie star. I got a nice house and Hollywood, what the fuck? Why am I unhappy? Because I was just serving my ego. And, I was playing out my trauma. I understand all of that. There was unresolved pain and fear that I was trying to reconcile through the material world. And then I started this journey, not just, therapy, but really a spiritual journey. And then once I got connected, once I understood, I had experiences, whether it's through meditation or vision quests or all the things that I've done, once you know, once you have the experience of it, once you felt the truth, it's just like, that's it. Like in my lady's the same way. We're both in this place where it's almost like all we want to do is serve God, or deepen our connection to God. Why? Because it feels so fucking good. Like nothing else feels better than that. And so, there's also this intuition, like if I do that, I'm going to get everything that I want. Now, maybe I don't get it in the way that my ego would like it, but the deepest part of me is going to get everything that I want on this planet. And that to me is, I mean, that's goes back to what I said earlier. That's how you get out of the matrix. You know, serve God, love. It's the same thing.
Through God.
Through God, love God, obey God, surrender to God. You know, all of those things. You know, that there's surrender to that force, whatever that is. You know, and you can't go wrong in that place. But you know, yeah, I pull out my phone. You know, I get on Twitter. I see a couple of tweets. You know, they're moronic. I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm, you know, right back in the matrix, right? Like it happens so quick. And then okay. You know, I notice my mind reacting and getting pulled in. I'm like, there it is. There it is. That's the devil trying to pull me back into the Maya. You know, trying to like target my trauma, like bring me into resentment, bring me into separation. And so you have to be super vigilant to avoid it, you know. And there's a way you can still be in the world. I want to be in the world. I want to be doing things. I want to be on social media, you know. I don't want to like go, like I said, like live in a cave and separate myself from the world, and, you know, spiritual bypass everything. It's like I want to be in the world and have the experiences and face the heartbreaks and the betrayals and the ups and downs. And I want to live it all. I want to experience it all. So that means you have to, you know, be in relationship, go for things, you know, and continue to risk. But if you can keep that connection to source, if you can keep that connection to truth, right, deep level of truth, you'd be fine. You know, it's just, and it creates a safety, right? And then I think it's that thing that allows you to play this whole thing like the video game that it is, because you know it's like death is just transition. You know, if you can let go of the fear of death, and what are you really afraid of? Like, I know that when I die, I'm just going to transition and my soul's going to journey onward and then maybe reincarnate again. I don't know, but that it's not permanent, right? That gives you a lot of comfort. It gives you a lot of power. And do we know that's true? I don't know. Can we know? Not from this level of consciousness, but going back to what we said about Tate, what's useful is more important than what's true. And so thinking in those terms gives me a lot more power and freedom in the world. So that's, for me, is the best way to think. And because it's useful, because it gives me more power, that it must be true.
I'm only afraid to not truly live, not afraid of the death. But what if you never truly live? You know?
I hear you.
A man has two lives. The second one starts when he realizes he only has one.
Right. That's a good one. That is very true. Was that who said that? I mean, a lot of people have probably
said that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I saw Naval, because we were talking about Naval earlier. I remember he tweeted that out somewhere. Maybe he was the one who originated it.
Yeah.
I'm sure people have said different versions of it, but yeah, it's true. I think I only realized that recently. I wasn't really, I didn't think a lot about death until maybe the last, I don't know, 5-6 years. It's just, I don't know. I didn't want to think about it. But once I started to think about it and reconciled to it, yeah, something relaxed inside me. It's like, okay, everything's going to be okay. If I die tomorrow, it's fine. And in part because I feel like if I actually look at my life, I'm proud of it. You know, I'm like, I did good. I you know, was it perfect? No, but I showed up. I took a lot of risks. I followed my heart. I followed my passion. You know, it was messy, but you know, I lived an interesting life even up to this point. So if I died tomorrow, you know, I'd be like, fuck, okay, that was good. That was a good run, you know. And I'm proud of that. So it almost like everything else after this just feels like gravy. So now I'm just like, have fun, you know, like create what you want, take the pressure off yourself, and just see what wants to happen. And I think, I don't know. I think human beings are on the verge of understanding, or maybe I should just speak for myself. Like, I feel like I'm on the verge of really understanding how powerful we actually are. I get it. I sense it. It's right there. But there's some kind of wizard-like, God-like power that we all have to create that's within all of us. And I understand that intellectually. But in an embodied way, I'm just like, I feel like I'm just about to I'm in it, but it's like there's one more level to really understand this level of the video game. And it's exciting because I can feel like, oh, fuck. Then you get into like real wizardry. I can make manifest anything that I want. And that's not the way I used to think 10 years ago.
That's a good ending.
That is a good ending.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Always a pleasure, man. I always enjoy talking to you. You're such an interesting guy. You ask great questions.
Good.
Yeah.
All right.